You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now, it's our turn.
Evening, everyone. Blimey, 2 shows in a row. I can't be having this, can we, eh? You start getting used to all this. But it's after the watershed, you know, it's after 9 o'clock, so we can expect my sort of foul-mouthed tomfoolery. But, you know, I've been listening to myself, which I don't usually do, because I'm one of them people, you know, that doesn't like the sound of their own voice, surprisingly. And, you know, when you listen back to yourself, you think, am I going over a bit overboard with that swearing and carrying on, and people comment on it, don't they? And when they talk about the Razor's Edge show or the co-hosts, they'll sort of in brackets foul mouth, you know. So yeah, I'm going to try and temper it a little bit. You know, if only so I can listen back to it myself and not feel embarrassed. Yeah, since the last show, I made mention of the dearth of emails because I've been irregular in getting the Razor's Edge show out to the masses, if we can call the masses, you know, how many people listen to this show. But yeah, I have our friend Darren in Wythenshawe, a regular correspondent with the Razor's Edge show. He's been kind enough to send me an email, which I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, we've got Saturday, we all know, don't we? For those of you who don't, for some reason, you're tuning in for the first time to Critical Mass Radio, perhaps via a leaflet that you received in Manchester on Saturday, because a few of us went out into Manchester Central, into the city centre there, posh bit, St Anne's Square, and did a bit of leafleting. We Are Change leaflets and leaflets advertising the Critical Mass Radio conference on this Saturday. Absolute purgatory for the likes of me. I just can't be doing with the general public, especially shopping general public. But Gwen, who's like head honcho of We Are Change, came all the way over from Leeds on Saturday, put to shame some of our local people, travelled all the way over from Leeds, and she loves it. Can't get enough of handing out them leaflets. It was freezing as well, you know, freezing taters. But she was there and she was giving out leaflets to these drones, these grey-eyed shoppers carrying their bags full of shite they don't need, which they've worked all week for to buy, you know. But I was giving out leaflets, but Gwen really keen, like I say, she'd talk to try and get talking to and everything. And I was getting really fed up with it. But then this young girl come back, Claire, her name was. If you're listening, Claire, for the first time, thank you, welcome. Yeah, she came back. Oh, I've got to shake your hand, she said. I've just seen your leaflets. I've got to shake your hand. She said, I've been waking up, I've been doing my research, and she says, how great to meet people doing this. So just for Claire on that day, you know, it made it all worthwhile, and she said she's going to try and make the conference. She's signed up at We Are Change Manchester and Freedom Northwest. So it shows you, doesn't it, even though activities like that can seem depressing, dealing with the general public, but it just shows you one seed, just one person. For that one person that afternoon, it made it all worthwhile. Fantastic, and fantastic for Gwen for coming all the way over. He was coming on Saturday as well, so people make a point of saying hello to Gwen. She's a fantastic girl, a true stalwart of the truth movement, and has been. She used to go out leafleting on her own, she was telling me. On her own, before she got involved with We Are Change or anything, she used to just download stuff off the internet, you know, information and points about 9/11 and 7/7, and she'd go out leafleting on her own in Bradford. You know, hardly the most woman-friendly place anyway, is it? But yeah, so that shows you the sort of committed people we've got involved. So if you're listening, Glenn, hello. I'll see you Saturday. Right, yeah, going to be great, isn't it, Saturday? People running around like headless chickens trying to get things sorted, but it's all coming together. People have been very kind with their wallets and, you know, putting money into all sorts of things like PAs, and it's just great, you know, the commitment. And, you know, even though we might not get loads there, it's not the point, is it? It's the first one, the learning curve, you know, where we iron out all the nonsense, and so for the next one we do, which we will do, won't we? Because we're that type of people, we won't let it lie. You know, we won't let it lie if we cock up this one and it's a bag of shite. We'll just, first one of the night, shite. Yep, we won't just let it lie. We'll iron out all the creases, and the next one will be ace, and a lot cheaper besides, and we'll have more people there. Because, you know, that's the type of people we are, isn't it? Yeah, right, we've had an email from Darren from Wythenshawe. You know, that big sink estate on the south of Manchester. A lot of nice people in Wythenshawe, actually. Darren's one of them. And this is one of the strangest emails I think I've ever had. So I'm going to take my time with it. It's not that long, but it's, it's really weird. It's, Dear Alex, there appears to be some very strange synchronicities and connections going on with the media hype news, with, might I say, racial undertones. Your show's interest in the occult origins of the Beatles may just be a coincidence, but I feel we're all beginning to tap into the consciousness and being fed truth by our guides into the light of truth. Right, and then he goes on to mention some of these strange synchronicities and connections. It's Susan Atkins, a member of the Manson's family, was given the name Sadie Mae Guts whilst in the group. Manson used the term Helter Skelter to predict a coming race war. Helter Skelter was a song on the White Album by the Beatles. Also on that album was a song called Sexy Sadie. Two of the original Beatles were Peter Best and Stuart Sutcliffe. Peter Sutcliffe. In 1969, the Beatles gave a rooftop concert on the Apple Building at 3 Savile Row. You see the connections here? Jimmy Savile and Peter Sutcliffe were great mates, apparently. It's 3 Savile Row, Jimmy Savile. At the Olympic opening ceremony, the Arctic Monkeys played Come Together by the Beatles. Strange. In the cartoon series Hey Arnold, Monkey Business, never seen that, Mr. Arnold teaches classes about monkey nucleosis, a made-up disease that a person gets from a contact with a monkey. For a while now, we've been getting unsavoury stories in the news about racism and football, and fans making what the news media term monkey chants. It's a weird and disturbing synchronicity between the racial war that Manson was attempting to bring about and what's happening lately in our news stories, and all linked with Savile, Sutcliffe, Atkins, Schwarzenegger, and the Beatles. That's Darren from Wythenshawe. Well, possibly. Yeah, it's on the face of it, all seems a bit tenuous, doesn't it? But we know how the Illuminati works. We know how the powers that be work. To us, it seems fantastic that, you know, things like that, all these different strands could come together in what's happening within the media now and the hype. But to them, that's what they do. They plan things well in advance, don't they? Going back donkey's years, and then they bring all the strings together, and we all think it's, you know, coincidence and happenstance. But these bleeders know what the reality is. So yeah, Darren, you probably made quite a good point. And like I say, I was interested in the Beatles, so we did that show about the Beatles, and yeah, people harp on about it, and not everyone was a fan. Some people loved it, some people didn't. But is this consciousness pushing people in the truth movement, or people who do stuff in a certain way, nudging them so that they get certain information out into the consciousness, and it all comes together, doesn't it? Good point, Darren. Good email. One of the strangest I've ever had. But yeah, definitely something to think about. I don't want to keep harping on about the. We went on about it last week, didn't we? About the child molesters in the higher echelons of government and above and below. You know, they're keeping the lid on it, aren't they? Let's face it. You know, you get the impression that the stuff that's going on in the media now with Savile, and now you've got the hairy. I mentioned that last week. Got the hairy cornflake. He was brought in, wasn't he? Not for kids, apparently. You know, just being a lech and doing whatever they did. Which in the 70s, I think, you know, that was the culture, wasn't it? Probably still is. But in them days, you know, turn on the telly, you saw it, didn't you? Benny Hill and all that carry on. That'd be, you know, would that be sexually molesting people? Would that be, it's certainly persona non grata now, isn't it? You don't get programs like Benny Hill and that sort of, which, you know, at the time seemed fairly harmless, didn't it, and innocuous. I mean, I was only a kid at the time of Benny Hill and stuff like that, but, you know, I don't think because we watched Benny Hill, we started chasing women around the street and pulling off the skirts to reveal their underwear and stockings and such. And there's, you know, But yeah, you just get the feeling that there's so much waiting to come out. It's like a dam, isn't it? And the kid's got his thumb in the dam, and it's just waiting to all come cascading out. And you know, this network that has kept this paedophilia and this abuse, not just of children, you know, teenagers and even adults, you know, through the trafficking and whatever, you know, and they've had this network that has held it all together. People like fucking Margaret Hodge and, you know, Tony Blair and all them in the London councils and all that with the child abuse stuff that they managed to hide and everything. And you've got Harman, haven't you, tried to facilitate paedophilia, you know, reducing the age of consent and all this carry on. And they're all squirming and they're, you know, trying to stop it all coming out. But you just get the feeling all it takes is a few to break ranks who are being picked on, and then it'll all come crashing down, because they're like rats deserting a sinking ship, aren't they? And they'll just turn on each other, and then it'll all come out. And hopefully, you know, because we've seen it, and I've got on about this in a bit, because I've made a point of it, because we saw in the police elections, people are fed up with the system. They're not bothering voting for it anymore, are they? The lowest ever turnouts in elections. I know it wasn't for Parliament or councils or anything, but still a chance for people to cast a vote for people that are supposed to be able to make change. People weren't asked, were they? One place, was it Newport, Gwent? Nobody turned up to vote at all. Not one vote. Not even a sheep turned up to vote. So that's not, you know, a complete condemnation of this system from people. Well, I'd like to think so anyway. I'd like to think it was people saying, we've had enough of your system. Your whole system from top to bottom is corrupt, it's manipulated, it's disgusting, it's full of charlatans and filth, and we've just had enough. I'd like to think that's how people were thinking. Or is it that people just could not be arsed getting away from, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, or whatever they've been watching on the telly? I'd like to think it's that. I think it's probably the latter, you know, that people are just that apathetic and can't be asked. That, you know. Well, I don't know what you think, people. I just think I think it's a damn waiting to bust. I've got plenty to talk about tonight. It's been a bit of a rush actually, because I've been grafting all week on nights. First night off, didn't get out of bed till just before tea time, so it's been a mad rush trying to get stuff together. I already have some stuff knocking about, because, you know, when you sat there in the week watching the telly, listening to the radio, you met little notes, don't you? Mental notes or whatever, what's getting on your nerves. Well, I do anyway. I've got a little book, you know, a little black book, and I, you can imagine, can't you? And I sit there making little points and naming names, and I'll keep this book. And when the time comes, Harriet Harman, Tony Blair, Richard Littlejohn, all these people have been going in my book just lately, and not just high-profile ones as well. So, you know, smaller fish to fry, all going in my little black book. And when the time comes, well, we'll talk about that when the time comes, won't we? So what we'll do, we'll have another song, and then we'll get stuck into all this bile and hatred, which will be, you know, relatively swear-free, if the New Look Race Said show's got anything about it. Right, let's have a look. Hey, I tell you what, let's get this out of the way. You know, I'm cutting my swearing down, but doesn't mean that I can't play songs that have got swearing in. So if you, any of you chaps aware of the Mac Lads, a band from Macclesfield, totally despised by the media, PC Brigade hated them, but to me they were just a reflection of working class culture and humour, and to me always sort of epitomised my sort of background and the sort of people I knew, and just, you know, it was like a spitting image version of the culture I came from. But the establishment hated them, the music press hated them, you know, all the trendies hated them, used to get their concerts banned by, you know, all these studenty types who, you know, we can't have that, it's so un-PC. But I love the Mac Lads, which probably says more about me than anything else, doesn't it? So if you don't like this sort of thing, switch off, see you in a bit. The old Mac Lads there articulating a hen night in Macclesfield, I presume. And we've all seen them, haven't we? Hey, right, yeah, my little black book. I've a few in there. Margaret Hodge, you know, Tony Blair. Just, it's just like Harriet Harman, she's one for me, Patricia Hewitt, these so-called fighters for freedom, for the working people, for ordinary people. They were, high execs in the National Council for Civil Liberties, but that was National Council for Civil Liberties affiliated to the paedophile information exchange. Going back a few years, admittedly, 80s and early 90s and that. To them, in their mentality, that's freedom, that's fighting freedom, that's giving people rights. Paedophile information exchange, which campaigned to decriminalise interest and basically legalise sex with kids. And then you got Cameron, with I mentioned it last week, with the Schofield thing. First thing he says, doesn't he, when he's given this sheet a list of high-profile Tories, including McAlpine, who've been raping and buggering kids. Hey, first thing he says, doesn't he? We can't have this because it'll create the possibility of homophobia. Wow. Why would you? What's the first? It's the first thing that says to me that he's covering something up. But the second thing it says to me is that he knows about a network, and yes, perhaps the majority of them are homosexual that are doing this, but twisted homosexuals. I made the point last week, I'm not having to go at homosexuality, between two people of the same sex who happen to love each other. Get on with it. I'm not asked, nothing to do with me. But the fact of the matter is that Cameron and his ilk know that these people that have, the powers that be have got stuff on in Parliament, in that den of treason. The powers that be have got things like this on them. They know they're homosexual. They know they've got a penchant for young kids. And they've got that over them. And Cameron knows it. So the first thing he does is put up this PC block straight away. Well, we can't start bandying stuff about because it might attack the homosexual community. You weren't exactly thinking on your feet, were you, Dave, you Bullingdon Club bastard? Right, where are we? Yep, keep going on about it, chaps. I know I keep going on about it, but it is going to be the next thing, which is Syria. It's the next sovereign state, isn't it, lined up, by the Rothschild Zionists. Hey? I know what's happening in, I'll go on to what's happening in the Gaza later on. I want to talk about that in a bit. But to me, the next thing that the New World Order's got planned is Syria. And you can just see it all playing out. And I keep having to reiterate this, chaps, but it is so important that we get this out and try and get people to think about what's coming and to see through the media hype and the lies. They're just working to a tried and tested formula, aren't they? Demonise the leader of a country. Saw it in Iraq, didn't we? Saw it in Libya. We're seeing it in Syria now. Iran, obviously, next. Always the same thing, innit? Vicious dictator, terrorising his own people, bayoneting babies, turning off the incubators. Hey, Britain now joining forces with the French, tearing up the arms embargo on Syria. Hey, allowing the West to send the anti-aircraft missiles to the rebel forces, my ass, foreign mercenaries. Get rid of Assad. Hey, they fund the dissidents with the targeted country. We saw it in Libya with these, so-called spring uprisings. And they'll get the false flag attacks, don't we? The threat of a chemical weapon, false flag, that's been blamed on Syria. They're coming out now. Russia Today, other day, Syrian rebels aim to use chemical weapons. Blame Damascus. That's a report saying opposition fighters have chemical weapons. Libya's sources supplied them. Apparently, they're going to use them against civilians. And the person behind this is Assad. And that's Russia Today. And Russia Today, a lot of the truth movements say it's on our side. There's a lot of good stuff comes out of Russia Today, but there's still a lot of hype and crap. It's still controlled medium. Hey, the same again. Pictures of refugees fleeing into Jordan. Who are these refugees? Probably those with a bit of money in the pocket in Syria that know what's coming. rats deserting a sinking ship. But you see, all the media will show it, all these people going into Jordan. I mean, they've already got the people in place, to when Assad's taken out, they've already got the people in place. Puppet rebels, called what's he calling them? Haig's calling them, a legitimate government in waiting. Paid rebel terrorists. Wednesday night, France recognised a newly united group of Syrian rebels as the legitimate government of the country. So far we've got, a sovereign nation that's got foreign mercenaries starting this uprising against Assad, who's done absolutely nothing wrong apart from be a bastion against the central banking system. And they're coming over to these so-called rebel leaders. Who are they? Who are these rebel leaders? What's the background? We don't see it, do we? Because they're placemen. Then you get the no-fly zones, don't you? Under the pretext of protecting a civilian population. Who they're the murderers of in the first place. Protecting a civilian population. It's these bleeding New World Order bastards that are bombing them to, as we're seeing in Gaza. No-fly zone for the Syrian, more like. That's what it's about. So that the New World Order can bomb the Syrians to pieces. Frightening. Absolutely frightening. You just see what's coming. Yeah, the Chief of Defence Staff General Sir David Richards has revealed that British troops might also be deployed to assist refugees pouring into countries like Jordan. What has it got to do with us at all? Hey, absolutely nothing, except the removal of Assad, and then the IMF, WEF, ECB move in, rape the country's economy, steal the assets, put the people in poverty, introduce the central banking system. Job done. Hey, when you're using British troops to do it. I mean, some people think, don't they? My country, right or wrong. You hear it all the time, don't you, when you're talking about these things? Well, what are you doing? You stand up for we've got our troops over there, our boys. You might not agree with what's happening, but you've got to stand by our country, right or wrong. Well, you're fucking wrong. Simple. And when the civilian death tolls rise in Syria, and British mercenaries are coming home in pieces, in black bin liners, or with flags over the coffins, and they're driven down the street, but they cover them with flags, don't you? So the sheeple don't get too upset. I'll cry, all right, but I'm not crying for that. I just cry at your sheep-like behaviour and believing it all. That's what I despair at. That's what makes me weep. Yep. It really is annoying. It's really annoying. And this is all we can do. We're pissing in the wind, I know, and I felt like that on Saturday when I'm handing out leaflets to mindless drones. But to me, this is the next big thing. This is when our petrol will go through the roof once they start this attack on Syria. All the cost of living will go through the roof. Perhaps then, will it be then that the sheeple might start to ask a few questions? We keep seeing that. Hope springs eternal, doesn't it? And hope sprung eternal when people weren't voted in the police commissioner elections. Is it hope, or is it just complete dumbed down, apathetic shower of sheeple? Right. Tell you what. We'll have another quick chat. People always ask me, I've had it asked me a few times. When did you first, you call people sheeple and stuff like that. When did you first sort of wake up? And it's an hard question. Am I awake? I don't know. I just see things that annoy me and look for answers. Is that being awake? I think so. But I had to think. I was thinking the other day. When did this sort of awakening thing happen I've always been sort of political. I've talked about in the past, with certain things I was involved in. But to see, when did I first start to see a bigger picture? And I suppose what it was 1993 with Waco in America. Now I think back, and that was the first sort of time, and it's still 20 years, 1993, next year, February, wasn't it? 20 years since Waco, which for me was like the New World Order, especially in America, this system baring its teeth, to its people. We don't represent you. We're not there to represent you. We're there to control you. We're there to rule you. And anything uppity will be dealt with in this way. It was shock and awe, wasn't it? It was in your face terrorism of ordinary people in a compound in America who, whatever their beliefs, religious beliefs, or how they wanted to live their lives, it's got nothing to do with us. As far as I'm concerned, they weren't harming anyone. I've not seen any evidence since that they were a cult as the media portrayed them. They were religious, yes. They wanted to live their own way of life, yes. A lot of British people there apparently as well, hell of a lot. 30 odd British people, over 50, killed that day, over that few weeks of Waco. So that's when perhaps I first sort of realised that, we're not in Kansas anymore, as the saying goes, and the system isn't part of the people. We are not part of the system. We are just fodder to be controlled. And I came across this song the other week, reminding me. Really sad. But yeah, 20 years nearly. So if you want, say, an example of when the government first turned on its people in a so-called free democratic country, go back to Waco. Very sad, this song. Yeah, back with you. Yeah, sad song that, wasn't it? I suppose something I've missed is my disclaimer, isn't it? Because, sometimes this show can be a bit upsetting. So please be aware that the views and opinions expressed on this show should not be taken as representative of Critical Mass Radio or the other hosts who broadcast upon it. I believe free speech is a fundamental freedom and not a privilege, and I intend to express that freedom to its maximum. If you don't believe in free speech and expression, then switch off. If you believe that there should be parameters on freedom of speech, then switch off. If you believe that free speech shouldn't be for everyone, then off you fuck. But if, like me, you believe that everyone should have a say no matter how distasteful we find them views, then you've come to the right place. That's the Razor's Edge Show, isn't it? And if, like Darren, you want to get in touch, you can do. If you agree with what I'm saying, drop me an email. If you think I'm talking bollocks, drop me an email. And you can do so at razorsedge@criticalmassradio.co.uk. That's razorsedge@criticalmassradio.co.uk. And incidentally, if you're listening via Blog Talk or retrospectively via podcasts, because we do like to spread these things about all over the place via various torrent sites, you can come to criticalmassradio.co.uk, where there is a chat facility which you can join in, have a chat with like minds, comment on the show as and when they're happening. Fantastic. Have a bit of fun, have a laugh. Any comments. The hosts love it, when people get interactive, so if you've got anything to say it. I will dip in every now and then, have a look. Mostly it's just people being nice to each other, which is a great thing, but if you've got something to say or you're not agreeing with me and you want to do so live, then do so and I'll see what you've got to say. Like I say, razorsedge@criticalmassradio.co.uk. I love the old emails. Right, next thing, going on from that, British troops being used as mercenaries all over the world, basically. But Syria next. I made the point last week that why would you enjoy doing that job? The way you're treated as a squaddy. Coming up to retirement in the army, and they find an excuse to sack you, so you don't get your pension. You're made disabled by a landmine or whatever, and they try and take away your benefits. This is the case of that SAS chap. Took a souvenir, didn't he, a gun or something, 17 years. Make an example out of him. SAS soldier. So obviously good at what he did. You know, you don't get to be in the SAS unless you're a particularly good soldier. I'm not saying that in a praiseworthy fashion. I'm just saying, as a matter of fact, in the British Army, you do not get to be in the SAS unless you're good at what you do. And so obviously well respected amongst his peers and the officer class. And yet, 17 years. So again, they're just, on the one hand, they use the British Army as fodder and mercenaries to, you know, create this new world order that they're putting into place. America and Britain were just the armed wing of the new world order, but treats those soldiers like shite. A case came to my attention here. A newly married couple, he was an ex-squaddy, this fella, newly married couple, forced to live on £57 a week, committed suicide because they were abandoned by social services. The body of Mark and Helen Mullins were found lying side by side at their run-down home in an apparent suicide pact. News of the tragedy emerged yesterday as friends told how they'd been forced to live hand to mouth, making a weekly 12-mile trip to a soup kitchen on foot after Mr. Mullins' benefits were stopped 18 months ago. The couple were given free vegetables at the soup kitchen in Coventry each Sunday, which they boiled into a broth on a camping stove. They lived in just one room of their terraced house to save on heating costs and could not afford a fridge, so kept their food in plastic bags in the garden. They are believed to have killed themselves after 18 months of struggling to survive on the £57.50 job seekers allowance payment Mr. Mullins, a 48-year-old former Army physical training instructor, was able to claim. Charity workers who had befriended the couple said society had let them slip through the net. My arse. Hey, slip through the net. Mr. Mullins, 59, had suffered recently from learning difficulties, and social services were understood to have taken her 12-year-old daughter away last year after she was considered to be incapable of looking after her. As a result, her child benefits were stopped, but she was ineligible to claim job seekers allowance because she was not deemed fit to work. That's a catch-22, isn't it? She was also told she did not qualify for incapacity benefit because she had not been officially diagnosed with a medical condition. Mr. Mullins was his wife's full-time carer. He fought to get a carer's allowance, but was told he could not claim until she was diagnosed with a disorder. Officers discovered their bodies after neighbours reported they had not been seen for some days. Kervin Julian, who runs the Salvation Army soup kitchen in Coventry used by the couple, said the questions need to be asked. Why is it felt they had no one else to turn to? It's sad that in this day and age we've still got prehistoric services that are not meeting the needs of people who need them. Mark and Helen Mullins were left living on a measly £57.50 per week in a rundown property which has now been boarded up. Unbelievable. That's how we treat people in this country, eh? And he was an ex-soldier, that fella. Eh? The only way they could see out of it was to kill themselves. What type of country have we become? What type of country are we, full stop? Not what have we become, because let's face it, it's never been particularly great, has it? We've had to fight tooth and nail for everything they've ever given us. And I keep reiterating this point as well, people. You know, when people give up their rights at work, you know, when you union bash, which I do myself to a certain extent because I realise that the higher echelons have been co-opted, coerced, taken over, bought out, yeah, but ordinary people, you know, should be working together to keep their rights. So because you happen to be in a position where you've got a reasonably safe job and you don't join a union, you smirk at people that do, and you smirk at people that, you know, try and fight for their rights. And this is a prime example of what happens when you don't. When we are left to the free market of these bastards. Kill themselves. I saw a programme the other week on the telly but there were charities have taken, basically charity trusts have taken over the role, haven't they, of what government used to do or what councils used to do. Now charities have taken them over, haven't they? And there's a thing called the food bank now, where people who can't manage on their benefits which, I would have thought most people couldn't manage on benefits, are forced to go cap in hand to the council or whatever, and where they're given vouchers to go to food bank, which is a charity. These food banks go to supermarkets and they go to restaurants or whatever and ask them for food, and then they take them to a distribution centre, and people have to go with a ticket from the council to get some food. Where's the dignity in that? So they're not only you're taking away people's dignity when they're starving, when they're desperate. You don't give them a cash payment anymore. No, give them a ticket and they can go to a charity. It's like going back to the Victorian times, isn't it? Victorian Britain. I don't want to keep diverging off the subject. Victorian Britain. There's another lie. Hey? Happy Victorian Britain. All right, if you had money. If you didn't have money, it was pathetic. Hey? The time of the Empire. Again, in the mills, down the mines. People living in slums, kids with no shoes on their feet. That's what they want to return to. And that was the same. They wanted soup kitchens in them days as well. This is what, in effect, this is a modern version of a soup kitchen. A modern Western country, and we see things like this. Hey? That's what we're up against, people. They're no friends of ours at all. They despise us. We're cattle and we're fodder and we're just useless eaters, and the sooner we're culled for them, the better. Frightening. Oh. Tell you what, we'll have another song. This is a case of one of a series, actually, of songs I feel are better than the original covers. This one, the original of which Paul played the other night on his show. Totally different in effect. This has become a new song, but for me, a lot better one. See what you think. Not wrong with that, eh? Yeah, better for me. I like all the old folk sounds though, so I'm a bit biased. Yeah. Get back to these. We had in Manchester last week. Not only did we have these police commissioner elections, we also had a by-election. Piss poor turnout. Absolute. 18.6% of, and this was in central Manchester. So quite a big catchment area. Yeah, 18.6%. And that is despite, Labour have got postal voting off to a T in, proper working class areas. It's a scam, it's something that they get pull up on old ladies and take her for an old age pension in the car and anything. Oh, well, that postal voting malarkey, we'll sort all that out for you. You just give us the envelope and we'll do that for you. And they really have got it off to a T. So how many of this 18% was postal voting? We'll have to wait and see. But just complete disinterest again. And this, like I say, a by-election. And usually you're looking at 50-60%, aren't you, turnout? Because by-elections drum up that sort of interest because it's local and the media's focused on it. Nothing, absolute nothing. And like I say, I'd love to think that it's because people are waking up to the democratic scam. But I just think people have been that dumbed down and stupefied that they just can't be asked. And, I think that's the way the powers that be love it, because to them, it could go down to 5% turnout. And it wouldn't make any odds to them. To them, it's still legitimate. The whole democratic system is still legitimate to them on 5%, because they know it's a scam anyway. Democracy, my ass. But I don't know about you, if you had police commissioner elections in your area, but the leaflet we got, nothing. Didn't see any. It wasn't explaining what they believed in. Just showed you the candidates. Nothing about who they were, what they stood for. It's like It's not, I say it's a conspiracy to defraud the public, but it's not a conspiracy because it's there in your face. It's like they're saying to you, look, it doesn't matter what you vote for, you know, the people that are on this ballot paper all piss in the same pot. Nothing is going to change. You know, any powers that they do have will not affect the system, will not affect the status quo, will not affect how you live, but we're asking for your, you know, to put your stamp on it anyway, your seal of approval, put your cross on it. No wonder, you know, you get that through the door. Even thinking people are just screw it up and throw it in the bin. So what the great unwashed, the great swaves make of it, well, we've seen, haven't we, by the turnouts. One in Gwent where nobody turned up at all. Hey, imagine being the people in the polling booth and you sat there all day and nobody turns up. I don't know. It's just politicians in general. I can't think. I was having to think the other day of credible politicians in the last 50, 60 years. And you could say, yeah, perhaps he was one or she was one that I might not have agreed with, but, you know, they were, at least they had some sort of legitimacy, or they believed in what they said. And I could probably count on one hand. Dennis Skinner over South Yorkshire. I always thought he had a bit of bottle. You know, obviously he toes the line, doesn't he, when it suits. But I always thought he stood up for himself more than the others. Few and far between. Trying to think. Enoch Powell, even. You might not have agreed with him, but at least, you know, he stood up for what he believed, didn't he? Although he was a bit of a hypocrite when he came to that sort of thing, wasn't he? Because when he was a Tory, he was one of them that encouraged people from the Commonwealth to come to Britain, you know, to fill the labour shortages in the 50s and 60s. All that was the line that was spun. So he was one of them that, as a Tory, was all for bringing people in. And then when it suited, when he saw a chance to, you know, get a few votes or whatever, suddenly became anti-immigration, didn't he? But I always felt that despite, you know, he was one of them that at least had the courage of his convictions, and even though I thought he was a complete dick. But who else? I can't think of any. They're still at it, aren't they? Dennis McShane there with the expenses. When you see that, again, it's not gone away, has it? They're still at it. We get fed austerity, don't we? We get cuts here, your jobs losses there, benefit cuts that lead to people committing suicide, and the powers that be in the House of Treason. It's as if they live in a bubble. It's as if they live in another world. You know, these Eton, Oxford, upper middle class, lower upper class, Bullingdon Club bastards. I've got no idea, no concept of how we live at all. You know, what you whinging for? You've never had it so good. When we've fought, like I said, I keep having to reiterate this, but we've had to fight, ancestors and our fathers, our grandfathers had to fight tooth and nail to get to a stage we reached perhaps in the 70s, when perhaps we did reach a stage where, you know, we had decent living conditions, decent working conditions, decent rights, and since then it's just been an erosion process to where we've reached today, where we've got out, where we're back to square one, basically, back to Victorian Britain, where we have to go cap in hand to a soup kitchen with a token from the council to get fed, to feed our family, because we can't do it on the 50 odd quid a week that they. And again, they're talking, aren't they, about the 500 quid benefit cap. 500 quid sounds a lot, doesn't it? But think about it, you know, council tax, your rent, child allowance, whatever. If you've a family of, I don't know, 2 or 3 kids, how much of that 500 quid actually goes in cash that you can spend on food and utilities that go up by the day? Fall for this Daily Mail, Daily Express crap. Hey? It made me think, you know, with these elections, hardly anyone votes in an election. Does it even count? Does it have legitimacy? It wasn't the lowest ever turnout, apparently, even though it was a really low turnout for these commission elections. Apparently that was 1999 at the European elections at 23% for the, you know, overall election turnout. That's gone up a lot because people are a lot more interested in Europe now, aren't they? So that probably, you know, it's gone up a long way. And there is the new kid on the block in UKIP, isn't there? And, you know, well, people have got things to say. I keep getting sidetracked here. People have got things to say about UKIP. But to me, there is a lot of good people involved in that sort of movement. Obviously, it might be controlled to a certain extent. But, you know, if in a sea of shite, and there's, you know, one sticking their hand up that might be half decent, you know, Wales, for some reason, was particularly poor in these commission elections. Polling station in Cardiff South, Rumney, two votes were cast, as I said before. Newport, no votes whatsoever. So any of these police commissioners, hardly any of them have been elected with support of more than 10% of the voters in an area. You could even point out, as someone did on Twitter apparently, that fewer people voted than the number of people who actually report crimes. You know, and apparently loads of ballot papers were spoilt in Wales. Like something like nearly 5,000 ballot papers were spoilt with people writing obscenities on them and such like. So they were motivated to see through it. Yeah, so perhaps, you know, it's not all bad news. People actually saw, you know, 5,000 odd people in Wales had the, you know, nous to actually go to the polling station and spoil their ballot paper. Made me laugh. This, you know the one, don't you? That Tory MP, the Dan Hannon, the Tory Eurosceptic. You know, he gets a lot of truth. People say, yeah, he's basically on our side and all that. No, he's not. He's a Tory tooth and nail. And this fella's said it all for me. He says the measure of whether PCC elections are a success isn't turnout. It's whether the victorious candidate cuts crime. So he's saying there, isn't he, this Tory toff, Hannon, you know, it doesn't matter how many people turn out to vote, it's still legitimate because, you know, they're given a mandate, aren't they? It doesn't matter how many people vote, they'll have a mandate to cut crime. Like I say, I can't make my mind up. Is it apathy or is it people, you know, just seeing through it? 5,000 people in Wales. They had the nous, like I say, spoiled the ballot paper, but the vast swathes, are they waking up to this sham? I don't know. And it is a sham, like I say, going back to them lot in that house of treason and the expenses while we are, you know, we have to eat cake. Let them eat cake. 50 MPs have been allowed to censor details of their taxpayer-funded expense claims after insisting that information about their second homes could compromise their security. What a load of bollocks. Have you ever heard such crap? The official expenses regulator published details of MPs' landlords on Monday night, exposing how several politicians are renting properties from one another or from their acquaintances. Good scam. Hey, get a house, rent it out to one of your mates, they put it down to expenses. .51 MPs successfully argued that information regarding their claims should be redacted so that the public cannot establish the identities of those who they rent from. Again, using the old false flag terror crap, you know, this, there's Muslim extremists might get hold of it, IRA terrorists might get hold of it, you know, that they're behind anyway, these false flag nonsense, this Al-Qaeda nonsense, this IRA terrorism nonsense. that doesn't exist anymore. And when it does, it's false flag. And yet they'll use that to hide, like, carry on. They get up in with expenses, taxpayers' money they spend, our money they spend, on porn films, so their husband can get a wank or whatever. Unbelievable. Despite the previous public outcry about expenses, yeah, it was 5 minutes, it was front page, wasn't it? John Bercow, the Speaker, has spent the past weeks attempting to block the release of the new information. Some MPs argued in response that without full transparency, they risk the public suspecting that they continue to benefit personally from the system, as if they don't. A partial list was finally released on Monday night, almost a month after publication was initially planned, minus details of the 51 MPs. The information release did disclose that at least 2 MPs are renting from their colleagues. These include Jessica Morden, who rents the property from fellow Labour MP Madeleine Moon. 2 other Labour MPs, Ian Mackenzie and Linda Riordan, are also exposed for a similar arrangement. 6 former MPs are continuing to benefit from the parliamentary expenses system by letting out their properties to current MPs. These include John Shaw, a former Labour MP, who lets a property to Kevin Brennan, and Ian Stewart, another former Labour MP, letting a home to Jerry Sutcliffe. Several peers are letting property to MPs, whilst also claiming taxpayer-funded expenses in the House of Lords. These include Lord Flight, former Tory Shadow Minister, who is letting a property to Keith Simpson, a ministerial aide. Baroness Tong, a former Liberal Democrat MP, is letting property to Steve Williams, the Lib Dem MP for Bristol West. Baroness Tong emphasised that she had not received accommodation expenses since she entered the Lords in 2005. We shouldn't bleed needing the money you're on. Several MPs are renting properties from some of Britain's wealthiest families. They include Nick Bowles, the planning minister, who is renting a property from the Burgley estate, Matt Hancock, business minister, who's renting a house from the Vesti family, and Liam Fox, the former Tory Defence Secretary, is claiming for rent on a property from Viscount Cranbourne's company. 2 Labour MPs are renting properties from senior union figures. One of them is Tom Watson, the Deputy Labour Chairman, who rents rooms in the home of a senior executive at Unite. All pissing in the same pot. Several MPs are also claiming expenses to rent properties from companies linked to high-profile political donors. Out of 320 MPs claiming for a second home, people are committing suicide because they can't afford to eat, and these bleeders have got second homes. They've requested that the landlord's details are redacted. They include Nick Clegg, the Deputy Prime Minister, there's a surprise, John Denham, former Labour Minister, Luciana Berger, the Shadow Energy Secretary, and Climate Change Minister. You couldn't make it up, could you? You couldn't make this up. Nadine Dorries, the suspended Conservative MP, who is currently appearing in ITV's I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. She's also at it. I don't know, I've never watched that. But the Telegraph has confirmed that Miss Berger is renting a flat in London held in an offshore company, which should be embarrassing for the Labour Party, who have recently criticised companies such as Starbucks for not paying any tax in Britain. Mrs Berger has requested that her details be redacted for security reasons and has only recently been informed that the flat was held overseas. You lying bitch. Sources close... I'm losing the ability to speak here. Sources close to Mr Clegg said that his landlord was not previously known to him and he'd requested the information be withheld for security reasons. Under changes to the expenses rule introduced in the wake of the previous scandal, MPs were only permitted to continue claiming for mortgage interest until August of this year. See, soon find a way around things, don't they? Soon find the loopholes. And they've got people paid to find the loopholes. Last month, the Telegraph disclosed that at least 27 MPs were letting out their London properties while also claiming rent for other flats. There has been speculation that some MPs may be abusing the new system, and standard campaigners have warned that any attempts to hide that has been warned against any attempt to hide details of rental arrangements. Absolute. It's just lists and I've got lists and lists here of the MPs and their ilk at it. And I could go on all night about it, but But I'll finish up. They're elected supposedly for the benefit of the general population, aren't they? That is what democracy is supposed to be about. We elect these bleeders to represent us, to work in our best interests. I want to see examples of where this is happening. Where is there any examples of them doing anything in our best interests, the people? They take us into a European federal superstate. How is that in our interests? They take us into wars for central banking cartels. Where is that in our interests? They put benefit caps on so people starve and commit suicide. How is that in our interests? They put caps on benefits of 500 quid so you won't be able to feed your family if you're in a situation where you've lost your job or whatever. How is that in our interests? Unbelievable. The only benefit, they've taken away our benefits. They love getting benefits, don't you? This is one big benefit to them. You can just see this. They've gone from, like I say, I'm just trying to think of politicians in the past that I thought, yeah, they were there to do genuine good or what they perceived to be the right thing. And they're so few and far between. It's just become a club to fleece us. Secret arrangements between those who've grown into this sort of self-congratulatory, backpacking, patting, funny handshake giving, Masonic, child fiddling, shower shite. It's just become like it's like a prison, isn't it? Westminster. The old lags educate, the new ones coming into ways to buck the system or get the most out of the system. And these, all these middle upper class toffs that go into Parliament now, there's no working people go there anymore, is there? They're seduced into this regime of entitlement of, get while you can because you're only going to be here for 48 months or whatever, because the plebs won't vote for you again once they see what you're up to. So get the most out of it while you can. Hey, that's what we're up against. Democracy's finished. It never started, did it? It was never in our interest. It was always about keeping them in power. Is there alternatives? Of course there are alternatives. And, you'll have this knee-jerk reaction to what I'm saying. Listen at this communist now. Listen at this lefty going on with himself. But I'm not a lefty. I'm not a righty. I'm not any ism. I don't believe in left, right. That's bollocks. All I can see is truth, and democracy is a scam. And there are alternatives, and it's not communism. To give an example, I always looked at the system Libya used of direct representation. I always thought that would be an ideal system, especially in today's age of information technology. I'd ask people looking. Obviously, it was a flawed model because you've got Gaddafi at the top, sort of ruling over it all. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think to give you a brief sort of outline of how direct representation works, supposing, we'll put it in, say, for Manchester. I live on a road in Manchester of about, 30 houses. So what we do once a week, the residents of these 30 houses on our road get together and we discuss what's going on in our road and what needs doing, what's working, what's not working. And we elect a representative from our road to go on to the next level, which is everyone in their particular road or avenue do the same. You get a council of people with a representative from each road and avenue. Sorry if it sounds a bit convoluted, this, but it's not really. It's fairly simple. Those people discuss what's happening in their area. They elect someone to go on to the next level, which might be the village or the town. Again, they elect someone, and it goes up and up and up to the top. So you have a group of people who are representative of the views of the people, going right down to road, avenue, street level. If at any time the person who is supposed to be representing you at whatever level isn't doing they immediately can be removed. Now, that's not communism. It's not democracy. It's just representation. Direct representation. That is an alternative. Why is that never discussed? Like I say, the precedent was set there in Libya. It wasn't ideal, not by a long chalk. Because like I said, you've got Gaddafi at the top, who used his oil wealth to, do a lot of the stuff, but in a free and open society, which is what we want, isn't it, people? And that would be ideal, wouldn't it? I'm not saying that's, written in stone, that's what we should have, but it's something we should be talking about. We always talk about what's wrong in the world, but we don't come up with alternatives, do we? That, for me, is an alternative to democracy or communism or whatever ism they try and throw at us. People being representative and being represented, that's what we want, isn't it? We want to be heard. We want our concerns raised, and these bastards aren't doing it. They're just in a club to fleece us, and I've had enough. I don't know about you. I've well had enough. Tell you what, we'll have another song, and we'll get back to the rest of this nonsense I've got to. I keep saying I'm going to lighten this show up, but it doesn't seem to work. I'm going to have to look at a different format, because I just seem to get bogged down in the nuances of these bastards, and there's nothing really light about it, is there? There's nothing really you can find humorous about any of it, So perhaps I'm going to have to reassess the format of the Razor's Edge show. Or perhaps I'll do that after the Critical Mass Conference, where when I meet some of you in the flesh, you can give me your sort of views how we can change things.
The Razor's Edge show. If the truth hurts, prepare for pain.
Pain in the ass. Right, here we go. We've all seen it, haven't we? What's going on in Gaza? Piles of dead bodies, kids involved. Some of the sights, you charred, broken little bodies of the kids. You think the way these tossers in Parliament and just the media in general, they're pontificating about Israel, brave little Israel. Remember that in The Sun years ago, brave little Israel. Like to portray Israel as this, tiny little harmless country, the jewel in the Middle East, a shining light of democracy in a sea of, fundamentalism. They're the most, what is it, the fourth nuclear power in the world, fourth largest nuclear power in the world. But how much? $6 billion a year from the Yanks to finance this bandit state. Barack Obama, they've every right to defend themselves. No country on earth would tolerate missiles raining down on its citizens from outside its borders. Have you seen how crap that Hamas's missiles are? I saw a picture on David Icke's site. Shows you one of Hamas's missiles and the damage that did. A scuff on a street, useless. And the same equivalent damage that an Israeli missile did. Tore a big crater right out of a little village there, killing how many little children, men, women, children, defenceless against these bleeders. William Hague there, same again. He said Palestinian. See, I'm losing the ability to speak. Something's happening. Hey, let's get the tinfoil out. Palestinian Islamicists of Hamas bore principal responsibility for Israel's bombardment of the open-air prison that is the Gaza Strip. Principal responsibility. So they're blaming Hamas, Obviously Hamas probably aren't whiter than white, are they? But think about what the Palestinians have gone through. Your whole nation ripped to bits and stolen by these bleeders, whose only mandate to do it was a book they wrote in the first place. An examination of the sequence of events of the last month showed that Israel played the decisive role in the military escalation, from its attacks on a Khartoum arms factory, reportedly supplying arms to Hamas, and the killing of 15 Palestinian fighters in late October, to the shooting of a mentally disabled Palestinian in early November. The killing of a 13-year-old in an Israeli incursion, and crucially the assassination of the Hamas commander Ahmed Jabari last Wednesday, during negotiations over a temporary truce. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, how can you say that without sounding like a Mong? Hey, Benjamin Netanyahu had plenty of motivation to unleash a new round of bloodletting. The imminent Israeli elections, apparently, you can see it yourself, aren't they? Military attacks on the Palestinians, par for the course just before, the Israelis go to the polls. They probably vote in numbers though, don't they? The need to test Egypt's new Muslim Brotherhood president, Mohamed Morsi. See if he's got anything about him. No chance. And pressure Hamas to bring other Palestinian guerrilla groups to heel. Plus the chance to destroy missile caches before any confrontation with Iran. Plus, they get a chance to test Israel's new Iron Dome anti-missile system. Poor little Israel, eh? Poor little Israel. So after 6 days of sustained assault by the world's fourth largest military power on one of the most wretched and overcrowded territories, at least 130 Palestinians have been killed, and estimated half of them civilians. 5 Israelis have died so far. Bit of a one-sided fight, isn't it? And the state here, you've got Israel's Interior Minister, Eli Yashai. We've talked about him in the past, haven't we, and his racist attitude to immigrants in Israel. He said, we're sending Gaza back to the Middle Ages. How is it that only Israel could get away with this? Eh? Any other nation on this planet, the press would be full of it, wouldn't they? Press would be full of it. But, Israel has got this special place, hasn't it, on the world stage. For those of you who've done reading into this, for those of you who know the machinations of the New World Order and where the roots of these bleeders are, you know exactly the crucial role Israel plays in the whole of this. I haven't got time to go on about it tonight, but I think most of you listening live or retrospectively on podcast, you've downloaded this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Portrays itself, doesn't it, Israel? Some kind of victim. It's always the victim, isn't it? Always the victim. It's every right to defend itself from attack outside its borders. As if Palestine is theirs anyway. It's illegally occupied. It's an occupied country, Palestine. It's not Israel's. It's stolen land, and yet they played the media as if Israel are just defending their nation's rights from attack from these fundamentalist loony Muslims. Hey? Despite Israel's withdrawal of settlements and bases in 2005, the Gaza Strip remains occupied both effectively and legally, according to them, and is recognised as such by the UN. Well, that means nothing to us, doesn't it? Israel is in control of Gaza's land and sea borders and territorial waters and all natural resources. It has blockaded the Strip since Hamas took over in 2006-07, preventing the movement of people, materials and food supplies in and out of the territory. It's an occupied state, people, isn't it? It's just, and yet, where's the outcry? Where's the press? Where's the free press showing the realities of this? The children blown to bits by these bastards. Poor little Israel. Poor little Israel is going to do the first strike against Syria, first strike against Iran. Look no further. Look no further. You know, despite the piles of dead bodies in Gaza. I can't get the pictures, to be honest. I saw pictures of the charred, broken little bodies of the kids. Just reminded me of Waco, which we spoke about earlier. Same again. It's the children, isn't it? When you see that, that's the reality of this sort of thing. The New World Order. Our children. Bodies charred, broken, gassed, bombed. And you've got Hillary Clinton. She's there and she's talking about, well, America will always defend Israel, will always stand up for Israel. There. Have you seen Hillary Clinton lately? Dresses like a communist. Everything about her is communist. Hair drawn straight back. These, like, something from, you know, Mao's China. With these high-collared tops she wears. Hideous, satanic bitch. And they do it. They play for time, don't they? Whining. We've got no partners for peace where we are in the Middle East. No partners for peace. They're all against us. All they want. The reality is, it's a greater Israel, isn't it? From like Jordan to the Mediterranean, or as the old terms for it, was it the Euphrates to the Nile? And then even when the UN, you know, puts in resolutions having a go at Israel, they just ignore them. We don't support the UN. Obviously, we know what the type of tool it is, but even they have to every now and then sanction Israel or sanction the type of evil it gets up to, or try to. You know, but I don't see British mercenaries going into Israel. Do you? I don't see talk of that. If some of the resolutions that the UN have passed and Israel have just totally and utterly ignored here. Resolution 181, the partition plan of 1947, which was accepted by the Jews, declares Jerusalem, including Bethlehem, to be run under an international UN administration. This was reiterated in Resolution 303 a year later, but we're still waiting. Resolution 194 resolves that refugees wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbours should be permitted to do so at the earliest practical date, and that compensation should be paid for the property of those choosing not to return and for loss of or damage. That was 64 years ago, that resolution. Israel done nout. Resolution 237, Israel to allow return of the new 1967 Palestinian refugees. Israel, fuck off. Resolution 242 emphasises the inadmissibility of requiring territory by war and calls on Israel to withdraw its forces from land occupied in 1967. Israel, not interested. Resolution 252 declares invalid Israel's attempt to unify Jerusalem as a Jewish capital. Israel, not interested. Resolution 271 condemns Israel's failure to obey UN resolutions on Jerusalem. Israel's response, fuck off. Resolution 298 deplores Israel's changing the status of Jerusalem. Again, not interested. Resolution 446 determines that Israel's settlements are a serious obstruction to peace and calls on Israel to abide by the 4th Geneva Convention. Again, Israel, not interested. Resolution 452 calls on Israel to cease building settlements in occupied territories. Again, ignored. Resolution 465 deplores Israel's settlements and asks all member states not to assist Israeli settlement program. Ignored. Resolution 469 strongly deplores Israel's failure to observe the Council's order not to deport Palestinians. Not interested, deported them by the bucket load. Just goes on and on and on. Crimes against humanity. That's what we're dealing with. Eh? Crimes against humanity. Something the Jews, supposedly, with their past, should know all about. Crimes against humanity. Having been the victims, haven't they, in the past? Not these Zionist bastards haven't. When we know the scam, when we know the reality of the bigger picture, when we talk about when the first thing they throw up, isn't it, the Jews, is Holocaust. these Zionist bleeders. Whenever anyone talks about Israel and the shenanigans it gets up to, oh, you're an anti-Semite. But as we've spoke about in the past, these Zionist bleeders were the ones that sent the ordinary Jewish people into the Nazi clutches in the Holocaust. Because they hate real Jews, they hate ordinary Jews with a vengeance. Because they're not Jews themselves, they usurp Judaism and use it as a flag of convenience to get away with their agenda. If that makes me anti-Semitic, I'm anti-Semitic. Fuck them. That's the truth. And ordinary Jewish people can see through the scam as well. Because they were the type of people that did die in the bleeding Holocaust at their hands, financed by the Rothschilds and the Warburgs. They're the ones that financed Hitler. Fourth Geneva Convention is supposed to protect civilians under military occupation. It's not happening in Palestine, is it? No violence to life or person is permitted. No cruelty or torture. No taking of hostages. No outrages upon personal dignity. No collective punishment. No collective punishment. One Israeli dies, 50 Palestinians will die. Palestinians armed with leading catapults and missiles, which technology goes back to the bleeding Second World War. Israel's state of the art can take out a satellite dish, one of their missiles, stops the communication of Hamas, or the alleged communication of Hamas. Saw it on the telly the other night on a news report. Pinpointed one little satellite dish on some house in the Gaza Strip. Hamas haven't got that technology, have they? Practically in the bleeding Stone Age. The quarrel is between the Palestinians and Israel. The quarrel is not between the Palestinians and Israel. It's between the international community and Israel. The 2004, the International Court of Justice, the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, ruled that the segregation wall is illegal and must be dismantled, and the Palestinians compensated for damage. Never happened. Never happened. The Israelis are still building it. In America, in this country, American politicians in this country, they snigger, don't they? Carry on handing out the rewards, and it runs into billions to this bandit state. Has it got any redeeming features, Israel? Any redeeming features at all? You look at human trafficking, who's pulling the strings behind that? All goes back to Israel. Child trafficking, all goes back to them. Any redeeming features about the place? I can't think of any. I don't blame the Palestinians for what they do, I tell you. We'd do the same, wouldn't we? Hey? Country invaded, partitioned, our people abused, our children abused, killed, murdered. Your homes bombed so they can build new ones for the Israelis. That was happening in this country. Wouldn't we take up arms? Wouldn't we fight back? I don't think we would, actually. I don't think we've got anything like the guts that the Palestinians have got. We'd just probably roll over and die and cry because we couldn't watch I'm a Celebrity Act. Get me out of here. Oh, my chippy's gone. What am I going to do for a tea? I feel for the Palestinians. I really do. The one nation in the world that can be used, abused, people used and abused, and the media and all the rest of the governments around the West just sit back and do nothing. And it's not a new thing, is it? I remember the Air You Sin, wasn't it? I don't remember it, but I remember reading about it. The Air You Sin in the 40s. A massacre then. Nothing happened. British soldiers were, the Israelis, the stuff they did to British soldiers. Torturing them and all sorts. But short memories in this country, I tell you. Is it the Stern Gang or whatever in Israel? No, it's a bandit state, people. It's a bandit state, and come when we free ourselves from this yoke, from this New World Order, I'm afraid Israel's right to exist will have ended. Because it's a bandit state. You know, all nations will have to go, won't they? All these constructs will have to go that the power elite have created. But that's the first one in my eyes. Israel, I'm sorry. Last in, first out. Right. Where are we? We'll have another tune, and what time are we on? Quarter of an hour left, and then we'll finish up, eh? Let's have a look. Yeah, this is an old one, but still sounds very fresh.
CMR Critical Mass Radio is a completely non-profit station where the hosts pay to broadcast their shows. The mission of the station is to get as much information as possible out to people about the world we live in, to unite like-minded people, and to try to come up with workable solutions. If you agree with the work that we are doing, then please feel free to help us continue by making a donation on the webpage. CMR is for people who want answers, because now it is our turn.
Hey, don't forget, you know what tomorrow night is, don't you? If it's not nailed down, they'll have it. It's Scouse Night. 9 while 11 we got George, haven't we, in the Prisoner broadcast. And before that, we've got the lovely Lisa with the Cry Freedom show. So don't miss it. It's Scouse Night. Lovely. Right, not got long left. So something else that caught my eye. And it sort of ties in to a lot of what we've been talking about. Scientists have demonstrated that injections of youthful blood carry semi-magical rejuvenating qualities, at least at the time being, this is what they're saying, for grey-whiskered mice. The researchers believe that the same might hold true for humans, suggesting that diseases like Alzheimer's and indeed aging itself might be prevented through the transfusion of youth's vigorous life blood. Now, are we touching on a secret that they've known about for donkey's years here? You know, it's not some sort of vampire movie that you know, a preamble for the latest Twilight film that's out, I believe. No, this is what scientists are coming out with now, saying that a total blood transfusion, you know, totally changes you. Gives you a whole new vitality, gets rid of diseases. The study showed that 18-month-old mice, that's quite old for a mouse apparently, who have received 8 transfusions of young blood had a much easier time making it through a watery maze than the old mice who had not received any transfusions. They were 18 months old, but they were acting much younger, like a 4 to 6 month old, like Jerry out of Tom and Jerry. Yeah, did I ever tell you that? I think I did tell you that. I was talking to these 2 African fellas, and I think I've told you this. I might have done airway because I mean, but I was talking to these 2 African fellas, and they spoke really, really good English. You know, perfect English. So I said to them, you know, where did you learn to speak such good English? One says, well, it was through watching Tom and Jerry cartoons. I said, oh, right. Then he hit me in the face with a big frying pan. Yeah, so, yeah, but we know that, right back to Vlad the Impaler, and what was that? Was it Catherine the Great that used to bathe in blood? These bloodlines have known all about this, haven't they? And where's all the blood go? So, you know, when people have blood transfusions that they're always pushing, do we know where that blood goes? I know supposedly it goes for transfusions to save lives, etc., etc. But, you know, is it audited? Are there any official figures where how much blood's actually harvested and where all that blood goes? Are these bleeders in the know, using it for whatever nefarious purposes to keep, you know, longevity going, and Clinton and Kissinger and their ilk? We're thinking it's going to save someone who's been in a motorbike accident, and it's going right down Hillary Clinton's neck. Communist neck. It's not done her any good though, is it? She still looks rough as a bear's ass. Cow. Black Book, what is it? I've already got it. So. Yeah, Doctor's been asked here, do I think that having young blood could have an effect on a human? I am thinking more and more that it might be, said Dr. the leader. Got a mop. If the same does hold true for humans, this discovery could become a major scientific breakthrough at a time when the world's elderly population is growing exponentially. Scientists predict that by 2050, a global population over 60 will reach a dizzying 2 billion people. 2050, my arse, not if they have their way. What will we be down to then? If they get their way, we'll be down to about 500 million, is it? Yeah, Georgia Guidestones, 500 million, servicing them, wiping their asses, and giving blood transfusions so we can keep them going longer. Fuckers. Some scientists have said that this explosion of Alzheimer's alone could cause a looming medical care disaster, beyond comparison with anything we've faced during the entire history of humanity. Scientists are excited about the potentials of this study. Like I say, they're leaking things like this out, but they've known about this for years, obviously, haven't they? They know about the properties of blood. Our life force flows through our blood, doesn't it? You know, our life energy flows through the blood. Our blood carries the oxygen, doesn't it? These fuckers have known all about that for millennia. You know, that's why they all live to be as long as they do. You know, they all touch 100, don't they, before they shake this off and shapeshift into whatever else they go into. Murdering scum. Yep, it goes on. Poor little mice there. Again, animals being tested for this sort of thing. Not a big fan at all on testing animals. For a start, I saw another thing the other day about pigs being shot, or being live pigs being shot at or put in, exploded, you know, with grenades and such like, and then being operated on by surgeons to give them experience in the field. Where's the outcry? Pigs are intelligent animals, aren't they? Where's the outcry? How can animals, which are just totally different makeup to us, aren't they? Physically, genetically, they're different makeup to us. How can you possibly say that you're going to learn anything from testing on animals or experimenting on animals and then transfer it to us? Why not test us on volunteers? Start with these bloodline bastards for one. Yeah, that'll be part when we win. There you go. Medical science needs to progress, and we need people to experiment on. Do you volunteer? The options for you are pretty grim if you don't. Kissinger, Hillary, Tony. There you are. Met good. Pig, move aside. Blair, step in that shoes. Step in them trotters, you murdering bastard. Although apparently Kim Jong-il, Korea's late leader, reputedly spent years injecting himself with the blood of healthy youths. Propaganda? I don't know, but he never denied it, did he? I don't know. This is what we're up against, people. A shower of vampires, a shower of bloodlusting, murdering scum. And we're coming to the end now, people. But Saturday is the time when we can all get together and discuss solutions to bring about all this control matrix that we've been talking about tonight, which is a bit depressing. And it's hard to sort of talk about these things in a light and jovial manner. Don't really work, does it? But yeah, Saturday's an ideal opportunity for us all to start, coming up with constructive solutions to end this nightmare that we're in. It's early doors, and there might not many people there, but I tell you what, the people there, are people that want to do things, that want to bring about change. So, don't get disheartened if not that many turn up. We're used to things like that, aren't we? The truth movement, I've always said it, is like trying to herd cats anyway. There's that many sort of bloody-minded people who go, I do what I want to bloody do. Nobody's telling me where I'm going and where I'm not going. That's something we've got to live with, isn't it? But, yeah, it'll infuse us, won't it, with a bit of new enthusiasm for the fight ahead, because it's going to be, long and hard, unless it's all over in one fell swoop because of these murdering, bloodlusting bastards. Right, I'm going to wrap up now, people. I think I've done my bit for tonight. Hopefully, I'll see you next week, but there's no guarantees, is there? And like I say, you don't want too much of this nonsense week in, week out, do you? Right, I'll leave you with a tune, and I'll say good night, and hopefully I'll see you Saturday. Good night, people. Take care.